Final part. When I was 12, my sister disappeared for 3 days. My parents told me to say she was visiting an aunt. There was no aunt. She came home bruised and quiet. I asked her what happened, and she just said, "Don't ask." My parents told me if anyone asked, I had to stick to the story. I didn't even know how to lie yet. I rehearsed it in the mirror. At school, her best friend cried in the hallway. I said nothing. Years later, I found out where she'd really been, and why. Though not willingly at first. They had broken up the week before, and he hadn't taken it well. He convinced her to meet him to talk things through. When she arrived, he was with 2 friends. They took her phone and forced her into a car. They took her to a hunting cabin Oscar's family owned outside of Lakewood. Oscar told her they would stay there until she came to her senses and got back together with him. When she tried to leave the first night, he hit her. That explained the bruises on her face and split lip. I asked why our parents hadn't gone to the police. Tessa explained that she had begged them not to. Oscar's father was a cop and his uncle was a judge. His family had connections. Oscar made it clear that if she told anyone, no one would believe her, or worse, they would. And his family would ensure our parents suffered for it. On the 3rd day, Oscar's friends left to get more beer. When Oscar fell asleep, Tessa found his phone and called our father. Dad drove out there with his friend Dan, a former boxer. They got her out. It wasn't as simple as Oscar just letting her go. Dad and Oscar's father had a conversation and made an arrangement. Oscar's family agreed to keep him away from Tessa if our family didn't press charges or tell anyone what happened. Part of that arrangement was maintaining the story about Aunt Rita. I expressed disbelief that everyone just pretended nothing happened after Oscar had kidnapped and beaten her. Tessa bitterly explained the reality of small-town politics. Oscar's family had money and influence. Ours didn't. It wasn't fair, but it was reality. I asked if that was why she hardly ever came home. She confirmed that Oscar had moved away for college, but his family remained in town. Every time she returned, she feared running into them, or him. When I mentioned that Mom had said his family moved back to town, Tessa's hands tightened around her mug. She said that was why she agreed to talk about this. I deserved to know in case I ever saw him. She warned me to stay away from Oscar and his family. When I asked if he still posed a threat, Tessa said she didn't know, but hoped not. The fact that they had moved back concerned her. She advised me to be careful. The next morning, Tessa was already packed to leave. When I asked why she was leaving so soon, she claimed she had work the next day, but I could see the real reason in her eyes. Being in town brought back too many painful memories. We hugged goodbye longer than usual. She apologized that I had to lie for her back then and that I'd carried this all these years. After she left, I told my parents that Tessa had explained everything about Oscar in the cabin. They exchanged a look I couldn't interpret. Mom admitted they should have told me when I was older, but after a while, it seemed easier to just not talk about it. When I asked if they were ever going to tell me, Dad looked tired and said, "Probably not." Some secrets become part of the foundation of a family. 2 weeks later, I was shopping at the local grocery store when I noticed a man staring at me from the end of the aisle. He was in his 30s with dark hair and a carefully groomed beard. Something about his gaze made my skin crawl. As I turned to leave, he approached. He asked if I was Tessa's sister, Monica. I froze, suddenly understanding who I was talking to. I tried to move past him, but he blocked my path. He asked how Tessa was doing these days, adding a comment about her still telling lies about him. I felt angry and told him I knew what he did to her. Oscar smiled, but his eyes remained cold. He claimed the 3 days they spent together at his family's cabin were Tessa's idea. He said she made up the other story when she regretted it. When I insisted that wasn't true, his smile widened. He told me to ask Tessa about letters she supposedly wrote him afterward, about phone calls. He claimed they had a connection that scared her, and it was easier to make him the villain than admit what she really wanted. A store employee approached, asking if everything was okay. Oscar stepped back and smoothly said he was just catching up with an old friend's family. To me, he added that I should tell Tessa he said hello and that he thought about those 3 days often. That night, I called Tessa and told her about the encounter. She immediately denied writing letters or calling Oscar afterward. I assured her I knew he was lying. I explained that he was in town and had remembered me, even though I was just a kid when everything happened. Tessa said she needed to call our parents because they needed to know Oscar was approaching me. The next day, Dad called Oscar's father. The arrangement was revisited. Oscar's father claimed his son was only in town briefly and would be leaving soon. Dad made it clear that if Oscar contacted me again, the old agreement would be void. A week passed without incident. Then one evening, I returned home to find a small package on the porch addressed to me. Inside was a worn spiral notebook. I recognized it immediately as the type Tessa used in high school. Opening it, I found pages of entries in Tessa's handwriting describing a very different version of those 3 days, one where she willingly went with Oscar, where the bruises came from an accident, where she fabricated the kidnapping story to avoid getting in trouble for running away. The last page contained a note in different handwriting, the truth has many versions. I knew immediately that the journal was a fake, a convincing one, but still a fabrication. The handwriting was close to Tessa's, but not quite right. Some phrases didn't sound like her at all. It was a calculated attempt to make me doubt her story. I called Tessa again and described the notebook. She told me to burn it. This was what Oscar did, twisted reality and created doubt. It was how he controlled her back then. When I asked if we should go to the police, she questioned what evidence we had. A fake journal he would deny sending? It would be her word against his, just like before. That night, I lit a fire in our backyard fire pit and watched the notebook burn, page by page. 2 days later, Mom received a call from Oscar's mother. The conversation was brief, but afterward, Mom looked relieved. She told me they were leaving town for good this time. His father had gotten a job offer in Arizona. When I asked if she believed them, she said she wanted to, but we would stay vigilant. Months passed without any further contact from Oscar or his family. Slowly, the tension eased. Tessa even came home for Thanksgiving, the first holiday she'd spent with us in years. As we sat around the table, I noticed how she no longer flinched at unexpected noises, how she laughed more freely than I remembered.